I'm 76 years old, and I lost the love of my life by always being right. Not in one big argument, not in a single cruel sentence. I lost her in the quiet spaces between my corrections, where she stopped trying to be understood. I'm telling you this now because there's nobody left in this house to hear it, and I think that's what I deserve. The rooms are still the same shape, but they don't feel like a home anymore. They feel like a record of what I didn't protect. Her name was Ellen. I'm 76 years old, and I lost the love of my life by always being right. Not in one big argument, not in a single cruel sentence. I lost her in the quiet spaces between my corrections, where she stopped trying to be understood. I'm telling you this now because there's nobody left in this house to hear it, and I think that's what I deserve. The rooms are still the same shape, but they don't feel like a home anymore. They feel like a record of what I didn't protect. Her name was Ellen. Some mornings I say it out loud just once to make sure I still can. It's strange how a name can feel heavier after it becomes past tense. I sit by the window with my coffee and listen to the kitchen clock tick. I bought that clock after she died because the silence felt too sharp. The ticking doesn't comfort me. It just reminds me I'm still here, which is not always the gift people think it is. When I was younger, I would have told you I was a good husband. I worked, I paid the bills. I fixed what broke. I never cheated. I didn't drink myself into a different man. I did what I thought men were supposed to do, and I was proud of it. The problem is, pride can be quiet too. It can hide inside helpfulness. It can hide inside, I'm just being honest. It can hide inside, someone has to be sensible. I grew up around that kind of pride. My father treated being wrong like a flaw, not like a normal human mistake, like a stain. He didn't yell much, but his silence could punish you. If you got something wrong at the table, some date, some number, he'd correct you with a flat voice, and you'd feel embarrassed for having a mouth at all. My mother learned to live around that. She softened everything. If she wanted something, she'd ask in a way that made it sound small. If she disagreed, she'd stop talking. She wasn't weak, she was careful. So I learned early that facts were safer than feelings. Facts could be proved. Facts could be defended. Feelings were slippery. Feelings got you mocked. Feelings got you ignored. By the time I met Ellen, I was already the kind of man who felt calm when he was certain. And if I wasn't certain, I'd become certain quickly, just to get my feet under me. Ellen worked at the public library when I met her. I was 26 and working for the utility company, climbing slowly the way steady men do. I went into the library looking for a book I'd heard about. I didn't know how to find it, and I didn't like asking for help, but something about that place made it easier. It smelled like paper and dust and quiet. Ellen was behind the desk, hair pinned back, cardigan sleeves pushed up. She didn't look bored. She didn't look rushed. She looked present. I asked for the book, half expecting to feel stupid. She smiled like my question was normal and said, "Tell me what you like first." Then she asked 2 more questions, listened to my answers like they mattered, and walked me to a shelf. She pulled out a different book than the one I asked for and said, "Try this. If you hate it, bring it back and we'll find another." Will? That word did something to me, like she was already imagining my return. We dated simply. Dinners, walks, long talks in the car with the heater running. No big performance, just 2 people learning from each other. Ellen noticed things. She noticed the sky changing color in the evening. She noticed how certain songs made her feel sad without knowing why. She noticed people, not in a judging way, in a gentle way. When she talked, she didn't just dump words. She offered them like she was handing you something she cared about. I liked her steadiness, but it wasn't my kind. Mine was controlled. Hers was attention. We married after 2 years. Our first apartment was small and a little ugly. The carpet had a stain we never fixed. The neighbors argued like it was a sport. Ellen would turn the radio up and start making dinner anyway. She made ordinary life feel softer. She'd put flowers in a jar, even if they were wild ones. She'd light a candle on a random night and say, smiling, "It's Tuesday," like Tuesday was worth celebrating. I teased her about it at first. "What's the occasion?" "Tuesday," she'd say again. I loved her for that, and I didn't realize how often I was also dismissing it. When Ellen got pregnant, I became a different kind of scared. The practical kind. The kind that looks like planning. I started working more, saying yes to extra hours, yes to new responsibilities. I told myself it was temporary, just until we got ahead, just until we were stable. Our son Mark was born when I was 31. I remember standing in the hospital room watching Ellen hold him. Her hair stuck to her forehead. Her face was pale and shining with sweat. She looked exhausted and happy in the same breath. I remember thinking, almost like a vow, I'll do this, right? That word again? Right. I didn't know back then that doing it right would become my weapon. It started small. It always starts small. Ellen would say, "It feels like it might rain." I'd say, "They said it won't start until later." Ellen would say, "Mark's getting so tall." I'd say, "He grew half an inch last month, not more than that." Ellen would say, "I think he's upset." I'd say, "He's just tired." It wasn't one big insult, it was a steady drip of correction. I didn't think I was attacking her. I thought I was helping. I thought accuracy was love. But what I was really doing was this. I was taking her experience away and replacing it with mine. And I did it so often she stopped trusting her own voice around me. There was a night early in our marriage. This one comes back to me a lot. When she came home from the library, looking worn down. She sat at the table and said, "I feel invisible there sometimes. Like people don't see me, they just see the desk." I should have said, "That sounds lonely." I should have said, "Come here." Instead I said, "Well, that's the job. People don't go to a library for conversation." I remember her blinking, slow, like she was trying to decide whether to keep talking or to protect herself. She said, "I know." Then she stood up and started making dinner. That was our pattern. Ellen would offer me something tender, and I'd respond with a point, a fact, a lesson, a correction, something that made me feel competent. And competence is addictive, especially if you grew up believing love is earned by being useful. The slow cost showed up in little ways. Ellen stopped telling me stories from her day, not all at once, just shorter answers. "How was work?" "Fine." "Does anything happen?" "Not much." I thought she was tired. I thought marriage just got quieter. I thought we'd settled in. I didn't want to admit the truth. She'd learned that if she spoke, I'd reshape what she said until it fit my sense of reality. So she saved her words. She gave them to Mark. She gave them to her sister. She gave them to nobody. Mark grew up. He became a teenager. Ellen and I argued about parenting sometimes, not screaming fights, just the kind where two people keep saying the same thing in different ways until one gives up. Ellen would say, "He needs you to listen." I'd say, "He needs discipline." Ellen would say, "He's not a problem to solve." I'd say, "He's going down the wrong path." I was scared for our son, and my fear came out as certainty. I didn't say, "I'm afraid." I said, "I'm right." Once, after I gave Mark a lecture, he looked at me and said, "You don't even hear what I'm saying. You just wait to talk." That should have shaken me. It didn't. I was too busy being offended. Mark moved out in his 20s, got a job, got his own place, started his own life. Ellen and I were alone in the house again like we used to be, except now the quiet wasn't soft, it was loaded. One evening, Ellen was at the table paying bills. I glanced at the cable bill and immediately started in. "They're overcharging. You picked the wrong plan. We don't need half of these channels. We should call and fix this." Ellen didn't look up. She just kept her pen moving. Then she said calmly, "You always talk to me like I'm a problem to be corrected." I laughed a little because I truly didn't understand. I said, "That's not true. I'm helping." Ellen finally looked at me. Her eyes were tired, not angry. She said, "You don't hear me. You hear your version of me." I could have stopped there. I could have asked what she meant. I could have taken it seriously. Instead, I defended myself like I always did. I listed my intentions. I explained my logic. I proved my point. And I watched her pull back, right in front of me, like a person stepping away from heat. A few months later, Ellen got sick. Not suddenly, not dramatically. She started losing weight. She had a cough that wouldn't go away. She got tired in a way that sleep didn't touch. She said, "Something's wrong." I told her it was probably allergies. I told her she was worrying too much. Then the doctor said the word, cancer. I remember sitting in the car afterward with the engine off, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead like I could hold time still. Ellen sat beside me, quiet. I said, "We'll handle it. We'll do everything they tell us." She nodded, but she didn't reach for my hand. During treatment, I became efficient. I made lists. I tracked appointments. I talked to the insurance. I learned medication names. The nurses praised me. People told me she was lucky to have me. I liked hearing that. And I hate myself a little for liking it, because it meant I could stay in the role I understood, manager, fixer, capable man, without facing the truth that I was losing her, and I still didn't know how to simply be with her. One night after chemo, Ellen sat on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders. The house smelled like hospital soap and something faintly metallic like medicine. The kitchen clock ticked like it was counting down for both of us. Ellen said, "Do you know what I miss?" I should have just said, "Tell me." Instead, I guessed, like an idiot. "The library. You'll go back when you're stronger." She shook her head slowly. "No." I tried again. "Walking. We can do that again." "No." Then she looked at me with a steadiness that felt almost gentle. She said, "I miss when you let me be right about my own life." I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened. And still, my instinct was to explain, to defend. Ellen raised her hand a little, not angry, just tired, and said, "Please don't." That, "please," was quiet, but it landed like a brick. At that moment I saw it. Not all at once, but enough to hurt. All the times she'd tried to tell me something and I'd turned it into a debate. All the times she'd said, "That hurt," and I'd answered, "I didn't mean it that way," like my intention mattered more than her pain. All the times she'd offered me her inner world and I'd corrected it like a spelling mistake. I sat down beside her, and for once I didn't talk. Ellen leaned her head back, eyes closed, and said, barely audible, I got tired of defending my feelings in my own home. I wanted to rewind years. I wanted to go back to our little apartment with the stained carpet and the Tuesday candles and the radio turned up against the neighbors. I wanted to walk in and say, tell me what you're thinking, and mean it. But time doesn't rewind. Ellen died the following spring. It wasn't dramatic at the end. It was small and quiet and cruel in its normalness. Nurses came and went. The light changed through the curtains. Her breathing got thinner. I held her hand and tried to find words that could undo what I had done. I said, I'm sorry. She looked at me for a long moment. No anger, just a tired kind of understanding. And she whispered, I know. Those were her last clear words to me. I know, not it's okay, not I forgive you, just I know. After she was gone, people said the usual things. She was wonderful. She was strong. You took such good care of her. I nodded like a man who knew how to stand up straight. But I went home to a house where no one corrected me, and I realized something terrible. I had won. I had spent years winning, and winning had left me alone. There are things you can't fix after someone dies. You can't call them and say, I finally understand. You can't sit at the table and redo the conversations. You can't return to the moment where you could have chosen softness over certainty. All you can do is live with what you built. Mark calls sometimes. He visits when he can. He's a good man. He's kind. But there's a carefulness between us that didn't have to be there. I think he learned early that talking to me meant being corrected. And habits like that don't vanish just because you're old. Some nights I walk into the living room and catch myself starting to speak to Ellen, like she's still in the kitchen. Then I remember. And the remembering feels physical, like a weight dropping into my stomach. If you're listening and you have someone you love, someone you argue with, someone you correct, someone you help a little too much, I'm not telling you what you must do. I'm not a preacher. I'm not wise in the clean way people want old men to be wise. I'm just telling you what I wish I'd known when it was still useful. Being right can feel like control. It can feel like safety. But it can also be a way of refusing to be close, because closeness requires humility. It requires letting someone have their own experience, even if you see it differently. It requires listening without preparing your reply. It requires letting the moment be messy. I didn't like being messy. I like clear. I like the corrections. And I paid for it with the one person who would have stayed if I'd just learned to shut up sometimes and hold her hand. If this meant something to you, you can say so. You don't have to. I'm not asking for anything from strangers. But sometimes it helps to hear another human voice in the dark, even if it's written. I'll end this the way my days end now. Quiet. I make my dinner. I wash my plate. I turn off the lights. I hear that kitchen clock ticking, and I think about Ellen lighting a candle on a Tuesday, smiling like the day itself was worth kindness. I used to correct her world. Now I'd give anything to sit inside it for 5 more minutes.